I think what I got frustrated by was that part of me that always wants like a clear resolution in the end.
Jeff, seriously, are we going back there? It's 2026. We've been doing this since
24. Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
When she was 23 years old, newly married and 6 months pregnant, was Sophia Johnson involved in her mother-in-law's brutal murder?
Maybe? No? It's hard to say.
We're doing a recap of Beyond All Repair on this episode of So Much Crime.
So little time. So Dee, I want to take a break from what we normally do in this part of the show. Normally, we try to come up with something like topical and witty to talk about like what's going on in the world and get people to go to our Patreon. But I want to do something a little bit different this time. So as we've talked about, I edit our podcast these days. And sometimes I'm editing our podcast and I'm like, God, this bit is like so good. And like maybe it's something from the Time Machine and it's really funny. And I was just doing that literally yesterday. I was editing this part and I thought, this is amazing, but it doesn't fit in the episode. So I'm going to put it on Patreon. And I'm so excited for people to hear it. But if you're listening to this on Spotify, on Apple, you're not going to hear that part. You got to go to Patreon.
The crack.
The Patreon. Patreon.com/SoMuchCrime, so little time. And there's all these great things that are only there. If a couple weeks ago you listened to our Oops All Time Machine episode, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. There's so much more like that. So go to Patreon.com/SoMuchCrime, so little time.
And enjoy. Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff. And before we start, a quick warning.
Warning.
This episode might have spoilers for Beyond All Repair. I don't know. I don't know that I know what I'm talking about, but we're definitely going to try to discuss the whole series.
If you haven't listened yet, check out our preview episode on this show. It's the one before this one in your feed.
We'll also put a link for Beyond All Repair in the show notes. All right, Dee, before we jump into our discussion, let us quickly recap what this show is about.
All right, so this podcast was released in 2024. The host is Amory Siverston. There are 10 episodes plus one bonus episodes. Now, the episodes do range from in around 30 minutes to 60 minutes, and actually a little bit over. But Jeff, tell us a little bit about the story from episode 1 that we covered in the preview.
So in episode 1, we met Shane. He was this guy who's born in the Bronx, but he went with his mother and his sister fleeing an abusive home. And they went all the way across the country to Washington State. Our host, Amory, had profiled him for a story on homelessness back in 2017. And so we hear a little bit about him. Then we pivoted to hearing about his sister, Sophia. So in 2002, she was newly married. She was 6 months pregnant. And her mother-in-law gets brutally murdered. We know that Sophia was convicted of the crime, but is claiming that she didn't do it. And now, where the podcast picks up, which is 20 years later, Sophia is seeking redemption. And it sure seemed like the story was going to go one way, and then really went some other ways.
It went a lot of ways and around the corner and back again.
Sure did. Where would you like to start?
I think I want to start with, I don't know. I have some things to say. I think we do honestly like, it's always good when I have some things to say.
I was going to say, this is a podcast about what we're talking about. The more things you have to say, the longer this episode will be.
I think I want to start with the host. I have thoughts on the host, and I'd love to hear yours first. Like, what were your thoughts on Amory?
I thought Amory was one of those hosts who, I liked her. I think she brought a little bit of humor. I thought she brought an interesting amount of personality. I thought it was interesting where we were sort of let in on her process. And I know that was controversial, and I'm curious to hear what the reviews say. She alluded to some of this in the bonus episode, but I could see how she might be a little polarizing, but overall, like, I don't know, I felt like she let us sort of into her thoughts enough that helped me at least kind of like she was, I thought, an effective teller of the story, but also like someone that could be like, oh yeah, this is messed up. And she injected enough of her own personality to kind of help me along. What did you think?
Yeah, I really liked her. I think there was something very calming nearly about her voice, which was kind of like this, is juxtaposition the right word here?
Yeah.
With the story, which was not at all calm. It was chaotic and all over the place in terms of the crime itself. And also, you know, Sophia and Shane and Sean's upbringing was chaotic. Like everything was chaotic. But Amory's voice was calm. It was kind of this soothing calmness that kind of added this additional element to it, like having that stark difference. It was really clear to me that, I think it's really clear throughout the podcast that she did some really thorough research on this.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, as you said, like she brought her emotions like into this in a way that didn't become, it's me, I'm having the emotional journey, even though she was, and even though part of this was her emotional journey, it was also Shane's emotional journey. It was also Sophia's to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like it was just a real journey. And I feel like I'm not sure if any other host that we have listened to, I just felt like Amory was like a great fit for this podcast and for this story.
I think I agree with that. I do feel like she reminded me of a lot of hosts that we've liked on certain podcasts. Like, I think the story was pretty different, but I mean, one of the ones I was thinking about was Liz Flock, who I thought was a really solid journalist on Blind Plea, one of the first stories we covered. Strong journalism, but also, you know, not super dry and not super removed from the story. Like she was present, her emotions were present, like her sort of emotional arc as she discovered more pieces of the story was a part of the podcast in Blind Plea. In a way, I thought it was here. I'm glad you brought up Shane, because Shane is also sort of, he's not a huge part of this, but I always kind of liked when he popped in.
He wasn't he wasn't hugely present.
Right. That's what I mean.
He was like the continuous part, wasn't he?
He was. But like, it's not like he's not, we don't hear from him throughout every episode.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Do you feel betrayed by what you thought this was going to be from the beginning?
That's a really interesting question. Do you mean because initially it was kind of set up that Sophia was the victim here?
Yeah. Like it seemed like it was going to be one of those redemption stories, like a false conviction story.
I didn't feel betrayed. Did
Okay.
you?
No, I think I almost did. I think this is one of those cases, and we've talked about this before, how I know you try not to learn anything about the case before we start listening. You try to have the podcast be the thing telling you the story.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, sometimes I don't do that. Sometimes I do. This time I did that too. And I deliberately didn't like sometimes I'm just like trying to find out basic details so that I can have like say something intelligent on our preview. And I end up stumbling across details that I shouldn't know yet. And I didn't do that this time. And I think I a couple times came across headlines. I was like, I'm not going to read any of that story because I think it's going to tell me things. And I think I'm glad that was the case but I feel like in our preview, it was cryptic enough about what was to come. And it was interesting to hear, and I think it was in the bonus episode, or maybe it was in the last episode, where Amory talked about how they had scripted the first few episodes before they got the report from Detective Harper, which sort of really kind of flipped things for her. Because I feel like Amory herself maybe also thought this was going to be a redemption story, but wasn't like, I think she hedged her bets enough. Like I think she was on the fence enough that it wasn't like overtly that. So like I could see, I guess part of why I asked the question is because I definitely see how people might have felt that way and thought like this was manipulative.
Did you though?
No, but I think that's there. Like, I think that's...
Did you get frustrated with the length and the kind of turning and the going back and forth on this is the truth, no, this is the truth, no, this is the truth?
I think what I got frustrated by was that part of me that always wants like a clear resolution in the end.
Jeff, seriously, are we going back there? It's 2026. We've been doing this since
24. Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Oh
We
my
did it all
God.
last year. Yeah, I know.
So we've been doing this since 2024 and you are still looking for a clear resolution. Honestly, what's the split?
I am an eternal optimist. I want the world to be a good place.
By catching the murderers? Tying it up in a little bow?
I want Olivia Benson to put the bad guys in prison every single episode. And I know that's not how every Law and Order ends. Sometimes the bad guys
I'm going to
get
still
away.
say dun dun dun, even though you tell me before it's dun dun.
Yeah, that's wrong. You do that wrong.
Dun dun dun.
Have you not seen the show?
I feel like it's an interesting question on the betrayal because for me, the whole point was the chaotic journey. And if what would the podcast have been if Amory told us like what she knew as such from the get-go and then built it back in? Like, what would it have been? Like, the arc of this was obviously, we thought this going into it. We had this relationship already with Shane. Like, this is fascinating. That was such a unique, like, start to the story.
Yes.
We meet Sophia. She's so different. And she's speaking about how prison was, like, so good for her. And she really found her space and her people, which is something I want to go back to. And then, as it goes on, we hear these things throughout that put doubt in our mind.
Right.
But we're on that journey with Amory. And like, that was intentional. And I think that's the sign of like, you know, for me, it was like, I cared. I cared about Amory. I cared about Shane. I cared about Sophia. I cared. I was frustrated. I had so many feelings. And that to me, like if a podcast or a story can elicit those feelings from me, that's a sign of an excellent and well-made podcast. Or a well-written story.
You're right. When I'm looking back at my notes and I take little bits of notes as I go through, as I'm listening to the episodes. And what I think is important about that is this story is full of bad people who are bad to other people, right? Like, it's not like there's just clear protagonists and clear villains. There's a lot of bad people in this story. And sometimes it's bad people being terrible to other bad people.
Or it's people, cultivating. People don't just become bad people.
No,
majority
but I think
of the time.
I think the one that probably stands out the most to me is Sophia's dad, who I think when he was first introduced is like, oh, this is a bad man who is cruel and does bad things. And that's true. And that can be true, but he can also be right that Sophia is lying. He can be right about some of the mean things he says about her. Just because he does bad things doesn't mean everything he says is not trustworthy. And I think it's
yeah, accurate, but also like, why is she the way she is?
Sure.
Why is Sean the way he is?
Yeah.
He did a really shitty job at parenting.
Yeah.
He did a really shitty job at making people feel loved and wanted no matter what, which I feel like is the fundamental, it's the most important thing that we can teach our kids. There's this line that I actually took down a note on that said, that Amory said, about all the name calling. Like her father was like, Shane mentioned a lot of the name calling, a lot of the slurs, etc. And Sophia also said like a lot of the name calling that went towards her. And it was noted like that really, Sophia I think says that really does something to a child.
Mm-hmm.
Like it does. Like it can't but. Like it colors your view of yourself and of the world in general. And I just think, okay, he might be right, but like that's like literally painting the kettle black, then calling the kettle black, and saying you knew all along that everyone else was wrong because that said kettle was black.
Well, I guess
It's a weird analogy, but like,
yeah,
you know what I
weird
mean?
one.
Like it's
The other thing that you made me think of that, like, I think upon reflection on the podcast as a whole is that if we were to go back and listen to this, and I think this becomes clear the deeper you go into this, all the pieces are there. Like all the clues are there from the beginning. And I think they're sprinkled throughout that this story Sophia has been telling is not trustworthy. It changes. There's elements of it that even from the beginning seem suspicious. And like the one that maybe was most obvious to me at least was that part of her story. I think it's the first version of her story that she tells where she talks about, this was in episode 3, where she talks about, it's funny because my note on this is that her story feels so much more believable than her brother's story. I thought that at the time, but then she talks about how she was at her home waiting for Marlyne in her nursery, listening to loud music when her mother came by, and she didn't hear her mother knock. And then her mother, they come back to that, how her mother knocked very softly, which is why she probably didn't hear her. And like, it's such a weird detail. Like, that's kind of a strange thing to focus on. Like, I'm in the nursery with loud music playing, and so I don't hear my mother. Like, why didn't she call? Like, if she was like, there's so many other ways that story could go, and that it focuses on that fact. It's like, well, that seems like a constructed story. And there's a lot of those little bits of things that are like sort of believable, but also like kind of sound like made up lies.
yeah. I mean, I think it's similar to the coat story. Like Amory was like,
the
hold
coat
on,
story. Yeah.
how are you leaving your coat behind? She's like, oh, well, actually, they argue a lot and they whatever a lot.
But it's like, it's January in a cold weather place and you're 6 months pregnant. You don't remember your coat.
I mean, I don't know. I was never pregnant in a cold weather place, relatively speaking. But like, you run pretty hot when there's like a baby cooking inside you.
Sure. But I mean, but also like the carpet cleaning story. Like,
I mean, the carpet cleaning story was so bonkers. It's literally like something out of like Sopranos or something. That's what I thought of anyway.
like who?
We gotta clean the carpets in my in-laws. Yeah. I mean, who does that indeed? Yeah. No, I agree. And like, what was really interesting to me throughout the first number of episodes, maybe like the first 3 or 4. I was so sympathetic to Sophia.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew, and I questioned myself at the time. I'm like, why am I feeling like this? And then I also questioned myself. This is a question for you and a question for me, but I don't think I would have felt like that if Sophia was not a woman. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, particularly with the pregnancy, the labor in prison, like all of that situation that we've heard of throughout other podcasts that we've listened to, like the impact of that and how hard it is and how harsh and crass it could be, etc.
Yeah.
And then like the new girlfriend being the reader of the victim impact statement. The girlfriend's name was Danielle, and I feel so much sympathy for her. Even though throughout the first few episodes, things would happen. I was like, that is a weird note. Well, that is like, as you said, like these are, weird things to have remembered and said. And then when she would change her story, it was like, well, that is also like, what's going on here? But I couldn't not have sympathy for her. And yet I feel like if it was flipped and say Sean was the one who was being interviewed and it was like this redemption story, I wouldn't have had that.
No. I mean, I think that's definitely true. I think it's hard to believe that this young, pregnant woman in a vulnerable situation, fleeing, who had fled a violent home, had, so many elements of her story. And then her brother, who we know committed some horrible acts, right? Like we hear about him raping his girlfriend, I think. I don't think they were married. Yeah. Girlfriend. We hear about him being incredibly manipulative, and I mean
The fake seizures.
the fake seizures. Yeah,
That was with Cynthia, I think.
yeah, that was a Cynthia. It's hard to believe that she was involved in something like this. Also, can I? This is maybe a dumb question. The sort of foundation of this story is that Sean needed money for his divorce.
Mm. How expensive are divorces?
Yeah, what is that money for?
I've never got a divorce.
Is it for lawyers? That was never, I don't know if that was said. If it was, yeah, that sort of just confused me.
That's a good question.
Must be lawyer fees. Lawyers are expensive.
If it goes to trial. So if it's mediated, it might need it might cost about $2,000.
The other thing we haven't talked about is this apparent friendship between Sophia and Marlyne. Like they were starting a event planning business called Best Friends.
That was so oh my God, here's half a necklace.
But then
it was very weird.
Where it started to turn for me in episode 4, where we meet Lynn and Linda.
Oh,
who?
Okay. Side note, pause for a second. The Lady Lodge. Do you remember that?
Yes.
The teepee?
Yes, the teepee.
It's like man cave, but Lady Lodge. And I am now obsessed and would like one. Sounds fantastic. Also, Marlyne was mentioning, or Marlyne apparently had money stashed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we've ever discussed this before, but when I was getting married, my mum suggested that I start a runaway fund. My mum loves my husband, by the way. She's known him a long time. But she was like, it's important that you are financially secure and independent. And what she said she would call a runaway fund is something that she would advise any person who was getting married to have, their own money set aside. And Marlyne apparently had that. And obviously, I don't know. It kind of made me lol a little bit because obviously the reason she had it was because her husband was gambling and not great and stuff. But there was also a lot of love there. And I was laughing because Annette would be happy to hear that someone was creating a runaway fund.
I mean, it is a good idea.
Mm.
Also, in that same episode, I feel like the story just had a little bit of everything. We learned that Richard, Marlene's husband, had a twin brother. And there was a point of questioning whether Richard's alibi was actually his twin, because he was gambling at the time of Marlene's murder. Yeah, and then that bit about how when Amory asked Richard to bring photos of Marlyne and he brings her driver's license photos.
I thought it was so funny because she basically made this comment. Marlyne was the kind of person who looked really good, even in her driving license photos or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, did he bring those because they weren't photo taking people? Is that the most recent photo he had of her and that's the way he wanted to remember her? Kind of hard to know that way. But I will say, it sounds like their relationship was, had its ups and downs.
Sure.
Yeah. As a lot of them do. And I'm sure he looks back and Marlyne, if she was still here, might look back and have things that they would change about it. But there was so much love there as well. And for him to have gone through the questioning, even within this podcast, so much of their relationship to be kind of aired out, that's hard.
Sure.
Yeah. I know that he passed away before the podcast went live, but I don't know. I just think it's they always they always suspect the husband, and when it's not the husband, that must be very difficult.
Yeah, I mean to lose your spouse, to lose your wife in a horrific murder, and to have to deal with being accused or presumed guilty of the crime, is sort of a double hit. That. To have all of your the worst parts of your relationship to be aired when there were seemingly a lot of good parts too. Yeah.
What will people remember about their relationship other than the bad parts?
Which I think was why it was nice to hear from Lynn and Linda, because I think they were kind of there to say some really, I mean, they said a variety of things, but they brought some humanity to this relationship and to these people. And they provided, I thought, some helpful perspective. They didn't say nice things about Sophia.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, they were really like, she is dangerous. She is a bitch.
When did you, if so, when did you turn on Sophia? Was there a moment?
I wasn't fully sure. Each time that there was a new story, obviously I was more skeptical, but I think, and I'm going to need some help here with people's names. Tina was in prison with Sophia, but Tina is now Morgan. Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
I think the time that I was like, what, was when Morgan realized that Sophia had lied to him.
Yeah.
Because it just felt worse that the now relationship, the relationship that was built in a kind of safe space, and that was prison, jail, was where she was still lying. I think that's when I was like, wait a second, what the fuck's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. So that happened in episode 6. For me, it was kind of episode 5. Then before that, where we got the whole story of Sophia doing the embezzling from her job, and which at first was sort of like a petty crime, a little thing that sort of happened, and then it kind of escalated pretty dramatically and significantly. Like she was convicted of, I think, stealing something like $70,000, but I mean, it sounds like it was more in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it sort of spiraled out of control. And I felt like that was a fairly big twist that then, was compounded in that next episode with Morgan.
Yeah, but like embezzling and murder are like two very different crimes.
They are, but I think the issue at hand isn't that she, and we don't even, I think, necessarily think that she was the one doing the murdering, but she was the one doing the manipulating, and she was maybe not trustworthy. And I think that story then planted that seed of like, oh, this is someone we may not be able to wholly trust. Like she's not innocent of serious crimes and lying and manipulation. She's capable of this. And then she does it to someone that she's in this relationship with, Morgan. And I mean, Morgan
I
is the one.
definitely think that was the turning point for me. But the 5 seconds, hearing that over and over, I was just like, oh my God. It was just, and I'm not gonna lie. When I first heard, I think it's episode 2, when I first heard the phone call, the wiretap phone call, I was like, this is weird. Yeah. This is like a weird reaction from her. Even though we were hearing just like a snippet of it, it felt like she wasn't reacting enough. And I'm like, oh, like maybe I'm an overreactor. Maybe I'll be, maybe that's my personality that I'm bringing to this. It's very hard. Like she's in a house full of her in-laws and she's like mourning them, whatever.
But that's my point about how like those clues were there from the start. And
they were sprinkled throughout. I mean, even the comment about the funeral from Marlene's a relative. And apparently Sophia said something like, oh, we're reading the will tomorrow. It's like, why are we talking about the will? Yeah. Like, why? What's happening there?
Yeah, that bit from the wiretap where Sean says, I think they know, and she doesn't say know what. You can interpret that a lot of ways without context, but the more context you have, the more suspicious and more guilty and implicated she seems. And again, it's like that she's a woman and that Sean doesn't seem like a great dude. I don't know. It's a messy story. It's a really messy story.
I a couple of the reviews I read, there's one by George Ramirez 4850 from 2 years ago saying, The heartwarming tale of at least 2 psychopaths getting away with the murder of a woman whose close friends describe her as the kindest person I know. The podcast does a good job of making sure the murderers get a chance to practice their manipulations on us all and muddy the waters as much as possible, and then ends with some lame, guilty waffling about the personal beliefs of the podcaster, with no consequences to the murderers, and even a nice coda of one of them carrying on the psychedelic delusional misdirection with the one member of her family that was young enough and together enough to have survived it more or less intact to this point. Brava.
I see the person's point. I don't wholly agree with that because I think, and this gets to something that I think is covered in the bonus episode. I think it's towards the end of the bonus episode where this reminds me of Amory at one point tackles 2 things. One is, why would Sophia turn Amory on to Detective Harper's report, which is effectively a confession?
Yeah.
But then the other part is what this journey really was for Shane, which again, I feel like is sort of in the background, but is present throughout. But it seems like this was important and impactful for Shane to do this work, right? To sift through all of these stories, through all of the records, and to be able to draw his own conclusions about what happened. You know, as a member of this family, you know, it's about his sister, it's about his brother, and there's no legal outcome here. Like, no one goes to prison really at the end of this, but maybe they will. Like, it seems like he's working on it. That's how we kind of leave it. And maybe nothing's going to come of it, but at least I felt like he got some kind, maybe not closure, but it seemed like it meant something to him. What do you think?
Maybe. I mean, it's just so hard. It's so hard, I think, to detach myself from the fact that Shane grew up in such a turbulent and chaotic environment, and Sophia was someone who was always very kind to him, and there's so much love there. And I feel like Amory alludes to this in episode 10, where it's like, is the Sophia now the same as the Sophia back when she was 23? Is that the way we see it? Like, are we so, you are this person and you can not change? And so where I feel like we get Amory coming out at the end saying, I believe you were involved, but I also believe there's, a chance for you to have changed. We get Shane saying, I love you and I want, I believe in you and I feel like we can do this together and blah, blah, blah. And really trusting in Sophia. And maybe that's a good way to show how a story can impact 2 people in very different ways. And 2 people can come out with a very different perspective on the goings on because of how they came in with it, because of everything they came into the story with. And for me, I don't know. I often feel like when I read the reviews of different podcasts or stories or books, whatever, people have this expectation. They want something. It's kind of like you want this cut and dry. You want this wrapped up in a bow with podcasts that we deal with. And it's not real life. This is real life. People having different opinions, and Amory and Shane having a different view and different perspective of the story and of Sophia at the end makes a lot of sense. And I think we need to respect both of those, because who knows what I'd be like in this situation if I was Shane. Same with you. We don't know that. And I just think it was a very respectful and maybe in a way brave way to end the podcast, because you were allowing for that discomfort.
God, it's it makes me viscerally angry when you're perceptive and make a good smart comment like that. That makes me
Is
actually
that because
mad.
You're not expecting it?
No, I just wish I'd said it.
Your bar is too low for my perception. I'm good at perceiving. I'm good with people.
Any more reviews?
There is so many. I have one that is a full screen long.
Oh, great. Please read it slowly.
I am not going to read it. I think it's personally, in my opinion, this is my son has started to say this. It's obviously something that's been drilled into at school. In my opinion, it's a very harsh criticism basically on like, the host frustrated me. She claims to be a journalist, but she's self-inserted and allowed her desire to believe a pathological liar caused the entire podcast to be a massive misdirection. I'm really tired of the self-insertion of modern journalists, in inverted commas, who think taking us on their emotional journey is the right way to cover a story. I'm like, okay, what's your problem? You're listening to a podcast. Like, you're not listening to the news. No?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's missing the point of, I think that's missing the point of what this really is. Yeah, if this was a news story, you don't really expect that much of the writer's experience to be a part of it.
Mm.
But this is about this woman, Amory, our host, trying to discover the truth. And like, we're with her on the journey. It's a different type of journalism. It's still journalism.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not reporting on the facts. It's something else. It's about an ambiguous story that this person is a part of. Amory is a part of this story.
Yeah, and I feel like she set that up in episode 1. Like she said, like, this took me on a journey that I didn't expect to go in. Like she didn't go in being like, let's go on an emotional roller coaster and be like, who the fuck is telling the truth here? Like, that was not the goal. That was not the goal. I'd love to know from Amory, like, how long she expected to spend on this podcast. Because 3 years.
Yeah.
I know. I feel I got connected and, like, was absorbed in some of the people we heard from. I can't imagine her. I will say, there's another review, lizard_lie or Lee, Li. A top 1% commenter on Reddit says, I was on a slight break from podcasts in general because I felt like I'd listened to so many that the new ones weren't grabbing me much anymore. Beyond All Repair changed that. It is so well done, and I oddly like that I have to wait a week for the next episode to drop. They obviously listened to it at the time it was coming out. It is well reported and extremely well structured. I actually just went back and re-listened to the first half of the podcast. I never do that, but I needed to listen to some of the people speak again. Totally engaging.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is one that would reward a re-listen. I think it would be interesting to listen to it, knowing how the podcast ends, and just hear some of these interviews again with that broader context. That's a good comment.
Oh my God. I just found a thread on Reddit saying, I'm Shane, here to discuss my experience and the impact of Beyond All Repair podcast. AMA. I don't know what AMA means in Reddit.
Ask me anything. It's like a Reddit thing. Yeah.
Oh, someone responded saying, I knew your sister and Tina/Morgan from jail. I heard the podcast and was confused. The people I knew were kind and helpful. Sophia was encouraging to me. Both your sister and Morgan were so cool and nice to me. I was very lost in life back then. They both made me feel safe. We played cards together. She loves spades. I want you to know, seeing and living with someone for 3 months in a jail setting tells you a lot about who a person is. There's a lot of shady shit happening to Morgan in jail. There were so many rumors about him. Your sister tried to keep him safe because people thought he was a cop. She used to say to people, if he tells on anyone, it will be me. None of you need to be worried. Just leave him alone. Things got bad for him when Sophia left.
But that's the whole point, is that most of the time, people who commit some of these crimes aren't all bad. And I think these podcasts that portray them as, everything they do is evil, or they're evil to the core, is not real life. People can commit horrible acts and still do
absolutely
kind things.
I say this to my kids all the time. I'm like, there's no such thing as bad people. There are bad choices. Like, people aren't inherently bad, but there are choices that people make throughout their life. Sometimes a series of choices that are not positive. They don't serve themselves and they don't serve other people. And I tried to tell them this. I'm like, yeah, I totally agree. I think, and maybe that's something we don't talk about enough in this podcast, is how often, I keep going back to you in this comment and I'm so sorry, but often people want to have things in a box. They want it to make sense, and like, but that's not how people are. Life is chaotic. People are chaotic. People bring their own trauma and their own inner critics and their own self-doubt to every situation. And I feel like this is a great example of a podcast where we see and hear the vulnerability of both the host and a lot of the key players within the story as well.
Well, but do you think maybe this is one of those, the reasons that people have a hard time with this, and maybe I do sometimes too, is that conflict between why people go to fiction, like why they go to, whether it's Law and Order or whether it's, a mystery novel, because you go to those things for that clarity and that, black and white simplicity, because the real world is so complex and so messy. But then maybe you shouldn't be listening to true crime, because true crime is real life, and real life isn't like that.
And like I get it for like fiction. I get it for like, if I'm watching a movie or a drama series and they leave me hanging at the end, I'm like, go fuck yourself. I've given you so much of my time and this is how we're going to end. Like, this is fictional. Like, we need to have an ending here. And my God, life is fucking tough right now. The world is a tough place right now. And I feel like, fiction is where things can be wrapped in a bow, or at least compartmentalized and boxed up.
This is a difference of opinion that my wife and I have had recently over the holidays about what movies or TV we're going to watch, because she wants, like, let's say a Christmas movie, like a Hallmark movie starring Joey Lawrence and the Lawrence brothers, which is so unambiguously simple and plain and straightforward. And I want something
the exact opposite of life right now.
Yeah, which, sure, I get why she wants that. And I sometimes want something that's not that, that is messier. And sometimes that's just, like, your brain doesn't need that. Sometimes it's you're already full of that, and you want something a little bit cleaner. But this podcast isn't that, and it doesn't pretend to be. Are we done with reviews?
I mean, I have so many. There's like one whole thread that's called "Never Felt So Misled by a Podcast as by Beyond All Repair." I'm with you. I enjoyed it overall, but I definitely felt played. I agree. It got really old toward the end. A good editor can manufacture drama where there was none.
Sure.
Oh, how frustrating, especially with all the legitimate stories out there. I feel like this is how Serial 1 should have been. Like, yes, you wanted to dig into it, but there was nothing there all along, and that should be fessed up too.
Dee, would you recommend this to a friend?
I am going to send this on to a couple of friends that enjoy true crime. I will say to them that it is a journey. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well done. And as I say, it elicited emotions. And I think that's always a good sign.
What's your elevator pitch on this? Like, how would you describe it without sort of giving away too much?
Part of me feels like this is not I don't do elevator pitch, is like use less words, and that's not me. I'm not going to try anymore to not be me, because I feel like when I'm me, that's a good thing. This is not unlike a Murder, She Wrote episode, I think, because it's longer. Okay, so maybe it's a Murder, She Wrote like 10-part series where the answer is kind of in front of you all along, but the portrayal and the story throughout brings you on the journey. So like you spot it and you see it, but you're so distracted by certain elements that you don't actually see it. Like, it's right there in front of you.
Sorry, I got off the elevator 3 floors ago. I didn't hear the last part. Well, I would also recommend this. I think it is well made. I think, like I said at the beginning, I thought the host was very strong.
I'm fascinated that you would recommend this. I feel like we spoke about this recently and you were like, I couldn't wait to finish it.
And honestly, sometimes I have to talk it through to decide how I really feel about it. Like, sometimes these conversations, like, I go into these conversations feeling one way and I come out feeling a different way.
That's interesting. So I feel like, to me, that's telling me that I'm just really good at convincing you that something was good, because I tell you my thoughts and like my perception of people, the key players, and the story itself, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm convinced actually that what I listened to was good. I feel like
if that makes you feel good, then you can believe that. But actually, these headphones aren't even turned on. I can't even hear anything you're saying. It's really about what I'm saying.
I just really enjoy how annoyed you got when you're like, damn it, you were right. And that was a really good point.
Really, I made a lot of good points. Yeah. No, I thought this was, I do think, I mean, I like the host from the start. I think it was well made. It was a journey. It wasn't what I expected, but sometimes that's good. Like sometimes it's good to be surprised by something.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you have not left us a rating yet, or you've never left a comment on our podcast, please do. It takes only a second to go into Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening. Leave us a 5-star rating. It really helps other people find the show. Same thing is true of leaving a comment. Just let us know your thoughts. If you want to give us your thoughts on Beyond All Repair or on anything that we did, we'd love to hear from you. The other thing you can do if you really want to help us out is to just tell a friend. Tell multiple friends. Tell all your friends about So Much Crime, So Little Time. We appreciate it. Thanks. The next time we're going to go somewhere we've never been before, and I know is at the top of your list of places in America to visit. Can you guess where it is?
Is it somewhere that goes with Mountain Mama?
It's West Virginia. Yeah, we're going to West Virginia.
How did I know?
We're going to go West Virginia for something a little bit unusual. This is a 3-part series of a podcast called Appalachian Mysteria, and the series is called Hell's Square Mile. This story is going to be about multiple murders, solving cold cases, the mafia, and, just to make it a little more interesting, international cocaine smuggling. How does that sound?
Fascinating. Let's do it. That's a lot to cover in 3 episodes.
All right. Well, it's 3 episodes, but it's a small geographic area. It's Hell's Square Mile. That's on the next So Much Crime,
So Little Time.
So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.